Hello my friends. In this video, we will present to you two scary and terrifying stories. Here is the first story, the story of the Blood Doctor. The legend of the Blood Doctor begins with an old cemetery near Lansing, Michigan. There lived a wealthy family with the last name of Blood, and they built a cemetery on their land. And this was in the year 1800 AD. They say that the Blood was a family of doctors, and that every successive generation of the Blood family had one doctor. On the last surviving member of the Blood family was an old man named Dr. Blood, and he was isolated and lived with his wife in the family mansion, the House of Blood. As it often happens when there is a scary old house in the vicinity, a legend arose about the House of Blood. The children who lived near it began to spin stories and spread rumors. They said that the Doctor of Blood had killed his wife. According to the legend, he said that he killed her with a gun. Then she cut off her body with the axe. When it was finished, he hung himself from a crooked tree in the cemetery. The story was that the cemetery was now haunted by the ghosts of the Blood Doctor, his wife, and their parents. The rumors were untrue, of course, but all the local teenagers trusted her. One night, it was a full moon. A group of friends, 2 boys and 2 girls, decided to go out to the old cemetery in the middle of the night. And they had heard those legends, so they decided to have this adventure. And it was dark, and the cemetery was overgrown, and the weeds were about knee-high. And they entered through the rusty iron gates, and they saw a sign hung above them that read, "The Cemetery of Blood Remains." One of them was planning to play a prank on the others. He had taken one of his mother's old white nightgowns and intended to hang it on a crooked tree in the cemetery. Before he could put it down, he heard one of the girls screaming. She saw a ghostly figure moving behind the graves. It looked like an old woman in a red nightgown. She appeared to be headless and armless. The girl said it was heading toward her, and then suddenly disappeared. The other young men thought the girl was fantasizing and making up stories to get attention. The teenagers started making their way to get out of the cemetery after the tremor that afflicted them. But one of the boys dared to break into the House of Blood, and the boy went to the old palace, climbed the window, and entered and waited for him an hour outside the palace. And the boy did not return, and his friends were disappointed. They were very fine. So they jumped into the car and drove to the nearest police station. When they told the police what they were doing, the officer on duty said, "The pain of the Blood Doctor still lives there, and he does not like any stranger robbing his property." The policeman went out to the cemetery with the 2 teenagers in their car. When they arrived, they were shocked to see that the old mansion was on fire, and the policeman called the fire department, and they tried to put out the fire, but it got out of control and burned the House of Blood. When the fire was finally put out, the firefighters turned over the rubble to find the remains of the teenage boy who had entered the house. The other children were devastated by the death of their friend. The most disturbing thing was that the boy's hands and feet were tied to the rope beside him, and they found a gun and a bloody axe. In the morning light, the police searched the cemetery and found a freshly dug grave, but there was no body in it. They found a coffin outside with the headless body of a woman who was wearing a red dress, and when the police brought the corpse back to the laboratory for testing, they discovered that it was the wife of the Blood Doctor. The body of the Blood Doctor was never found, and no one knows what happened to him. Since then, they say that the ghost of the Blood Doctor roams the cemetery at night with a gun in one hand, an axe in the other, and they say that his ghost kills anyone who visits the cemetery. There were many rumors after that, as a boy who went out to the Blood Cemetery said that he saw the ghost of an old man walking around the cemetery, carrying a corpse, and the corpse seemed to be headless and armless. In the year 1989 AD, 2 high school girls wanted to have some fun on Halloween night. After hearing the legend, they went out to the Blood Cemetery, and after they got out of it, their car got out of control and fell into a nearby lake. The girls were trapped in the car and drowned. Translated from the story, Dr. Blood pours Medi. Story 2: The Story of the Smiling Man. We all fear night and darkness, and loneliness is that frightening eternal trinity that will undoubtedly not change no matter what happens. Some of us claim that we do not care about these matters of fear, darkness, etc. But the reality has proven that we all fear something, and that we do not want to face what is unknown or not clear features. And perhaps this is the reason that drives us always to search and search for knowledge. And perhaps the invention of the light bulb was one of the reasons for it is fear. The fear of walking in the dark or secretly alone by the light of candles, which do nothing but make the matter worse. And it may be darkness and fear, they are the focus of our story. Michael, an 18-year-old young man, lives with his parents in an average neighborhood in America. Specifically in California. Michael was a very handsome and classy teenager. In addition to his love of adventure and a life full of travel and moving from one place to another. While he was in secondary school, Michael decided to go on a camping trip accompanied by his school and with his friends, wishing himself a journey and adventure that enriches and satisfies his explosive desires. Indeed, Michael set out with his friends on a trip to the forests, which will take 4 consecutive days away about the distance traveled by the road. Michael brought with him all his books about magic, elves and ghosts, and how to prepare spirits, and so on. During them, Michael found nothing but traditional camping with nothing new or exciting. So he agreed with 2 of his friends to conduct a survey away from those responsible for the camping trip. In order to live the adventure, his friends agreed with him, and one of them was called John, and the other was called Jimmy. The camping headquarters, and they headed towards the Asphalt Road, and their plan was to set off far away without a compass or any signs, so that they might live the ritual of loss in this darkness. We cannot say that nature has provided them with what they wanted, but certainly what happened to them after that was not a matter it happened by chance. After the start of the 3 young men, they found themselves in a wide square on the other side of which there are distant lights indicating the presence of life. But they are somewhat far away. The young men looked at each other and decided to continue their way towards the lights. So who knows what was waiting for them there? While the young men were walking on the side of the road, they were surprised by a man or a black ghost in the form of a man, dressed in black, and walking diagonally as if he was dancing a waltz. What drew their attention to the man was not all of the above, but rather his neck. His neck was tilted back at an irrational angle, his face towards the sky, and his mouth widened in a smile from ear to ear. The young men trembled and wanted to move away and turn back, but the man did not give them time, for his steps were faster than any other. Their thinking, and as soon as he was in the corner across from them on the other sidewalk, the young men signaled to each other to walk away from him without speaking to him. And indeed the young men set off and continued their walk without looking at him. And as soon as the man became behind them, Michael turned around and shouted that the man had disappeared. John and Jimmy looked, and indeed they did not find the man. And as soon as they turned their sight back towards the road again, they found the man standing directly in front of them, staring at the sky and still smiling. But his look suggested evil. All of them trembled, and Michael gathered his strength and shouted at him, "What do you want?" And almost to repeat his word, but the man turned around and walked with the same dancing steps in the opposite direction. And as soon as the man returned against the direction of the 3 young men, they looked at each other and set off towards the camp again, not caring about anything but returning safely. And the young men did not know until now who this man was, or was he a ghost, or just another lunatic. But what they were sure of was that it was completely abnormal. If you liked the video, do not forget to like and subscribe, so that we will continue to provide you with all new things. Thanks and goodbye.